Hey there, welcome to 3Spoonies. We're your hosts, Joe, Karen, and Claire. This episode is 10.5, where we are discussing ADHD in business. So let's get into some questions.
The Activity Connector's mission is to inspire children, young people, and adults alike to find the right activity for them through collaboration. We believe there's a sport or activity for everyone. We aim to bring organisations together to benefit children, young people, and adults alike within an education setting. If there's a particular need, we'd love to talk to you and see if we can help fill that need. We're currently working with organisations around domestic abuse, county lines, mental health, first aid training, and sports coaching. Do you have a hobby that makes a massive impact on you? Or are you looking for that hobby? Why not drop us a message or take a listen to the Power of a Hobby podcast, always looking for more guests to come on and share what they love to do. Do you work for a charity and want to get more exposure about what you do? Are you looking at sports events and need more support to set them up and run them successfully? Why not drop us a message and we can chat and see what support we can offer you? This and much, much more can be found at theactivitykonnector.com.
Hi, I'm Joe from Britta Business Solutions.
I'm Karen from Pony Pony Pony.
And I'm Claire from Sparkle's Gift Boutique.
And together we're 3Spoonies navigating our way through life and business with not enough spoons. Today we are joined again by our lovely guest, Beth Thomas, and we have some questions for her. So I am going to throw it over to Karen. What questions have we got?
We have a number of questions, actually. So the first one is from Rachel. She says, I don't have an official diagnosis of ADHD. I'm on a waiting list. Know that feel. Can I get some help before it's official? I feel like a fraud, but I don't want to wait. Oh, Rachel.
Oh, Rachel, that my heart goes out to you, first and foremost. That's really tough. You and a lot of people in the UK at the moment are on waiting lists that are anywhere between 2 and 7 years if you are an adult, and up to 3 if you are under the age of 18 and on a CAMS service. So this is something that we are seeing on an unprecedented scale, completely across the board. So it's a real challenge that a lot of people are struggling with at the moment. And in terms of accessing support, yes, you absolutely can. So self-identification can be absolutely as valid as a formal diagnosis, particularly if you are on the waiting list and looking to seek a formal diagnosis. And to really affirm that, a lot of people decide, actually, do you know what? I'm not even going to go down that pathway because self-identification is perfectly sufficient for me. And that's okay too. You will get some contradictory views in different spaces who might argue otherwise. But for me, I always say that whatever works for you is absolutely okay. And so if that is self-identification, that's okay too. So in terms of asking for support, it sounds like there's some potential imposter syndrome going on there. I heard you say sort of, I feel like a fraud. I can't ask for help. Oh my gosh, the audacity to take up space and ask for some support. And I get that. It's really tough, especially when we have the expectation that we should just be able to handle things on our own, or that we have all this capacity and potential to be able to manage. So why would we need help? So I completely get why that feels quite scary or wibbly wobbly or all of the overwhelming things. So in terms of options for you, it really depends. Of course, I don't know what you do for work and things like that, but the Access to Work scheme does not require formal diagnostic paperwork to seek support there. So you absolutely don't need a formal diagnosis, nor should you be asked or have to share one to access that support. And Access to Work can provide up to £66,000 per year for up to 3 years to provide you with support for specialist support workers and kit to help you overcome any of the barriers that might be associated with your condition, such as ADHD. So Access to Work could be an option for you to explore. And you could also look at reasonable adjustments if you work in an employed capacity, because again, you do not need formal diagnostic paperwork to ask for reasonable adjustments at work. And that could be an option for, again, exploring how you might be able to ask for some adaptations in your working environment to better suit your needs and your capacity. Other things that you could look at doing as well that are relatively cost effective and or free include things like support groups. There are lots and lots of virtual support groups. I host 2 different ones myself, and I know of a few others. So it could be worth seeing if there are any of those either local to you or indeed virtual, if that is a delivery method you feel comfortable with. And it can be so validating and so fulfilling to find people that get it, particularly if you might be feeling a bit isolated or you don't feel comfortable sharing this with other people in your circle at the moment. Again, I totally get that. I have a lot of clients that won't share this type of information with, like family members, for instance, or friends, for lots and lots of different reasons. So it's a personal decision, and it is absolutely within your power to decide who and where you share that with. And support groups could be a really good way of finding those people that get it without you necessarily having to disclose it to your entire personal world. So those are a few different options, and I'm always available myself as well. So if you ever wanted to contact me for a discovery call, we could talk about that in a bit further detail in a more personalized way for you and what's going on in your world at the moment, and we can figure out what support would be really helpful for you as well. And indeed, I'd like to think all coaches will do that anyway. So even if it's not me, it could absolutely be another, certified ADHD coach with experience in this world.
Cheers for that. That was a really thorough answer. Thank you. So I think that may be answering questions for a lot of people out there, and having the different options as well is really helpful, because you don't know what's available until you look, really, or until someone signposts you. So thank you for that. Next question is from Adam. I'd imagine there's a number of people in this position as well. He says he can't get Concerta anywhere and he's not reacting well to no prescriptions. Do you have any tips to keep him sane until he can get some more? I'd assume that's lifestyle type tips rather than tips to make your own amphetamines, because that would be
I was about to say, preferably don't be making any Breaking Bad style amphetamines in the bathroom. I can't recommend that. Please definitely don't do that at home. But Adam, that sounds really tough. And again, you're certainly not alone in having this struggle and this experience. So again, my heart really goes out to you trying to navigate this world. It can be so frustrating, particularly if you have finally found a medication that works for you, because that inevitably means you would have had to jump through a lot of hoops just to get to that point, to then find out that you have, supply issues or prescription issues or shared care agreement issues. It's so complex for lots of different reasons. So it can make that journey for someone even harder than it needs to be. So in terms of other tips that I would say as well, when I mentioned in the previous episode that ADHD medication is one option and certainly not the only thing worth considering when we take a step back and look at all of the different aspects, looking at how we might be able to implement what is called a holistic approach to managing challenges could be really valuable here. So a couple of things that's really important to know is that ADHD medication was actually designed for a very small control group of young white boys, and this also did not take into account the various intersectionalities and complexities of additional conditions or experiences, for instance, which we now know is a factor to really think about and take into account. So actually, the statistics at the moment for the efficacy, i.e. the effectiveness of medication, sits at around about 4 out of 5 people. So 1 in 5 people, which is actually quite a high percentage when we look at medication, will not respond either well or at all to medication. So it's a little bit like a gamble, really, and that can be really tough. So taking that step out to look at how we might be able to look at other holistic implementations could be really effective for you, as they might be able to provide that support that the current medication either isn't or is, but on a sporadic basis. So that is looking at your nutrition. Yes, I know I probably can feel the eye rolls from here, but it is really important. Again, remember what I said earlier, that we typically tend to have a heightened sensory system, so that also will have its own challenges to come with, which can also impact what nutrition is best for our bodies when we're eating it and things like that. So getting a bit curious around things like that could be really helpful. Sleep, yes, I know, another eye roll, but again, good quality, consistent sleep is a really crucial factor for everyone, regardless of your neurotype, and especially crucial when we think about the various amazing things that we're wanting our ADHD brains to do on any given day. Also things like exercise, because again, they can release things like the endorphins and dopamine, which our brains are often seeking because we struggle with that regulation of it throughout the day. So thinking about how we might be able to get that naturally through things like exercise, if at all possible, to create plans that incorporate these factors in a way that works for you, because it has to ultimately work for you. Otherwise, it's, going to be a one size fits all approach that just doesn't meet your needs. So you've got your exercise, you've got your sleep, you've got your nutrition. Also get curious around other things as well. Clinicians don't do this enough, but ideally, if you are even considering medication, you should have already been tested for things like thyroid, certain levels of vitamins in your system, because things like vitamin D and B deficiencies can exacerbate ADHD symptoms. Another little known fact about certain types of ADHD medication themselves is that they can also deplete your stores of magnesium, which again, ADHD brains can already be deficient in. And symptoms of that can include things like increased irritability, restless leg, increased brain fog, struggles with emotional regulation. So all things that we already know an ADHD brain struggles with can be made even worse by taking the very medication that's supposed to help us with our attentiveness. So having a think about actually what some of these factors could be and whether or not that's relevant for you to explore, and having a chat with your GP about whether or not it is worth getting some of these things booked in. As an example, and again, not from me because I'm not a medical professional, but I had a client that did not have a lot of these tests done in their titration phase. And so when they were trying to see if the medication was working for them, they weren't really sure because they already struggled with interoception. They had a combined presentation of autism and ADHD. They had a lot of medical gaslighting in the past, which led them to be really fearful around, oh, actually, can I communicate this? Can I share this? And is this really actually what's going on for me, or am I just imagining it? So there's a lot of complexities. And it actually turns out that they hadn't been tested appropriately for a lot of things, and they had an underactive thyroid in the end of it. And so that actually had a huge major impact on how effective the medication ended up being. So that's just one example of why it's so important to go and get some of those extra tests for the clarification, which should already be happening, but for various reasons often don't. So again, yeah, checking your baseline levels of things like that could indeed be making symptoms worse. And obviously it's going to be a bit biased, but coaching. I'm a firm believer that coaching can be really effective. You will have to find the right coach that works for you, absolutely. But coaching can be a fantastic space for you to validate what's going on in your world, understand why a lot of this stuff can be really challenging for you, and indeed what supports, strategies, or tools you need to go forwards and build those systems that really work with your brain as opposed to against it. And I think that is so underrated and can be really valuable for everyone, but especially if obviously you're having those challenges with the medications.
Thank you for that. I hope that helps you, Adam, although it may be by the time this podcast comes out, the supply will be better, but definitely get those things checked out because, yes, we are whole, actual people. Very important to recognise. So our next question is from, I'm not sure if it's Britta or Britta, so apologies for my pronunciation. She says, I have inattentive ADHD and my employer doesn't believe I have ADHD as I don't seem hyper. How do I explain it to him?
Ouch, is my initial reaction that I have to own, to be honest, Britta. I'm so sorry to hear this. And it frustrates me every time when I do, because it's not the first time I've heard this. So first and foremost, it's not up to your employer as to whether or not they decide to believe in something, because ADHD, as with all other neurodevelopmental conditions and disabilities and disorders, are protected characteristics under the Equality Act 2010. So there is no subjective interpretation to be had here. If you have ADHD, that is a condition that requires support by law. So we're talking about an issue of legal compliance here. I mean, again, just to kind of look at maybe some of the more extreme ends of this, the most recent and currently record-breaking case for discrimination, particularly disability discrimination in the workplace, happened recently, and the claimant successfully won 4.2, either 4.2 or 4.4, something around that, but just over £4 million from a London borough for disability discrimination against ADHD and PTSD. And some of the comments that were in some of the sort of social media threads and information about this online included, oh, you didn't look very ADHD. And so actually, we can see this as quite microaggressive commentary on your individual experience. And I'm really sorry to hear that you're experiencing that. In terms of what you can do about it, again, it really depends on the structure of your workplace and your organization, but you are absolutely legally entitled to being supported in the workplace, especially if you're experiencing particular difficulties as a result of your ADHD. If the employer isn't particularly supportive or responsive to this, have a think about whether or not you're part of any union, or you can become a part of a union depending on your industry and whether or not they can support you. Think about whether or not you want some advocacy support. So again, reach out to someone trusted that you might be able to have a discussion with this about, to really seek that support and that advocacy to make sure you're getting your needs met, because every person has the absolute right to feel seen, heard, and valued, especially in all of their spaces and in particular your workspace. More often, we spend more time in our workplace than we do at home. So we really need that to be an inclusive environment that meets our needs in order for us to be able to thrive, not just there, but everywhere else as a result. Because as you know, as Karen already said, we're humans, right? So we need that to happen for us to be the best versions of ourselves. So have a think about, again, unions, advocacy support, what exactly it is you need, whilst remembering that this is an issue of legal compliance. So it is easy for me to say this, obviously, without being in the situation myself. But yeah, as I said, subjective interpretation, there is no space for that here, because it is a legal responsibility of your employer to provide that. So think about how and what needs you have got that you would like to be met, and go and find the right spaces or the right practitioners and specialists that can help you get that. And again, as before, if you have any more specific questions, you can absolutely contact me directly, and I might be able to signpost you to some more sort of, you know, specialist areas, such as an employment law specialist in disability discrimination or something like that, if of course you feel that would be relative for you, and I'd be more than happy to help.
Thank you. That's really generous of you. So I hope that helps, Britta. And our final question is from our Jo, and she asks, do you want to ask it?
Go on then, I will. So we know autism presents differently in girls and boys. Is that also the case for ADHD?
Well, good question. Yes and no. I would definitely say that all neurodevelopmental differences certainly don't discriminate based on, you know, gender, age, race, nationality, any of these things. So it absolutely presents. However, there is a certain level, at least in my personal experience and my observations, there is a certain level of societal and cultural conditioning that often lead to different presentations between different genders. So, for example, if we look at my lived experience and my personal experience, I was classified as a tomboy. I was quite, what's the word, like rambunctious at times. I tried brownies, ended up being better suited to cubs, because again, that was in the days of much more kind of segregation between the genders. And that was very much my experience of growing up with certain hyperactive features that we can look back now and say, oh, okay, so that was some hyperactivity and some impulsivity. But at the time, because I was a girl, that was much less girlish and therefore less acceptable. And so I learned to mask and camouflage and internalize a lot of those overtly hyperactive things that may have otherwise led to further criticism, because that was painful. So as a result, I would hide a lot of that stuff and internalize it. Obviously, it didn't work particularly well, because I ended up with savage performance anxiety and low mood, as well as other things like disordered eating. However, looking at that, we can certainly see that, yes, we may have different things at play, such as conditioning, that might impact the way that we're presenting. Doesn't necessarily mean that we don't experience that. either, kind of overtly or, kind of internally, so to speak. And from a practitioner point of view, I see a variety. I see combined presentations in women, and I see inattentive presentations in men, and I see, both different ends of that, if you will, in a non-binary presentation. So, there really is a huge variety. So for this, I would say, again, personalizing it, getting curious about what this looks like for you individually, as opposed to what we think it should look like based on things like gender. Because I think that leads into quite the sometimes slippery slope of potentially missing key things and not quite picking up on stuff, or maybe diminishing someone's experience. And a huge example of this at the moment is certainly autistic presentations in women and girls, and that is really difficult because we're essentially excluding a whole body of people for their experiences because they don't present in particular ways we might expect them to. And there's a whole conversation at the moment about how sometimes it's much more appropriate to reframe questions to make them more applicable to, for instance, a female person, because the current questionnaires and screenings and questioning models at the moment in a lot of autistic assessments are again very much centered around boys. And there was a really good explanation of this. I'm paraphrasing here quite loosely, so bear with me. But one of them is based around special interests. So if you were to ask an autistic person with quite rigid thinking patterns, do you have any special interests in things like planes, trains, and cars? As an autistic person who thinks literally, I'm going to go, no, I don't think I have any special interests in planes, trains, or cars. So that doesn't apply to me. And I will say no. And that will then discount you from the probability of having autism. However, if we reframe that to make it more applicable to a female lived experience, to say, do you have any special interests that might include things that you listen to or do or actively seek out more often than other things that you would likely repeat to feel comfortable? And that can include listening to the same song again and again, or going to the same band, or having the same hairstyle, or using the same clothes. Then we start to see the shift, and then it's applicable. And the answer is, oh, actually, yes, that does resonate with me. So yes. So yeah, I completely agree that it's a yes and a no. Yes, because we do see the differences, but more because of that conditioning. That's my view anyway.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Beth. And thank you very much for being our guest again. Very quick plug something.
Plug something. Oh no, now I have to talk about myself and how amazing I am. The audacity.
Practice what you preach.
Right, I know, I always get this. Do you know what's funny is that when my clients get to the end of it, they are saying the same things. They're like, so what will you celebrate for getting your stuff done this body double session? I'm like, the student has become the master. I need to, my work here is done. Plug something. Scary things. I have a couple of spaces at the moment for some training and development and awareness and support with organizations. So if there are any kinds of HR, learning and development type individuals listening to this podcast and they are looking for some fun and interesting, inclusive support tailored to meeting their business's inclusivity needs, I would absolutely love to hear from them, because we have some really exciting things coming up in terms of how we're going to start offering our services with Neuro Inclusive Link, and I would love to be connected with them. And in the extra, slightly not too distant, but somewhat distant future, because time does not exist in my head like it does for others, I will also be having some things like workbooks and some self-study materials that individuals can go to download and process in their own time when it comes to some of the topics that we've talked about on this podcast. So stay tuned for those. And at some point, when my amazing VA holds me accountable to finishing them, I will get those done for you.
Noted. Anyway, thank you again for joining us, Beth. It's been amazing. And thanks for joining us, 3Spoonies, on the episode on ADHD in business. And we'd love to know your thoughts in the comments and any questions you have. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for our weekly podcast and leave us a review. You can also find us on social media, and we'd love it if you join the Business Success Network for Disabled Entrepreneurs Facebook group. You can also buy us a coffee if you like what we do. All our links are in the show notes. Go check them out. And we'll see you next week for our next topic on travel and business trips. Have a great day and keep track of your spoons.